Can't see the needle hole? Don't worry, I'll show you how to thread it in. 1 second, no eyesight needed. Hi there, it's Nancy. You know, I used to squint and struggle every single time I tried to thread a needle, holding it up to the light, cutting the thread over and over, just hoping it would finally go through. If that sounds familiar, you'll love these quick little tricks that make threading effortless even for tired eyes. And make sure you stay until the end. I'll show you a tiny trick my grandmother used that works even better than store-bought needle threaders. The old thread trick. Sometimes when you finish sewing, you'll notice a little piece of thread still left in the needle. Most people pull it out and throw it away, but don't do that next time because that tiny leftover thread can actually help you rethread your needle in just seconds. Here's how it works. When you're sewn, take a look at the short piece of thread still hanging through the needle. Instead of removing it, spread the two ends apart slightly, one to the left and one to the right, so the thread forms a small V shape. Hold both sides steady with your fingers so they don't stick together. Now, take the new thread you want to use and place one end right in between that little V shape. Then gently wrap the old thread around the new one 4 or 5 times, just enough to hold it securely. Once it's wrapped, keep it steady and use your other hand to pull the short piece of old thread through the eye of the needle. As you pull it through the new thread, we'll follow right behind, slipping neatly through the eye without any effort at all. And just like that, your needle is rethreaded. It's a clever little shortcut that saves time, frustration, and keeps your hands steady even when your eyes need a little rest. The broom bristle trick. Now, here's a really clever one, and it's probably my favorite. You can actually make your own little needle threader right at home using something as simple as an old broom and a drinking straw. Start by taking an old broom, the kind with plastic bristles, and cut off 1 or 2 thin strands from it. Then grab a drinking straw and cut off a small piece about 2 inches long. Now fold your broom bristle in half so that it forms a sharp little loop at the top. Slip that looped end into the piece of straw. Next, grab a lighter or match and very carefully heat the edge of the straw just enough to melt and seal the bristle inside slightly. This keeps it in place and makes your homemade threader nice and sturdy. And that's it, your simple DIY threading tool is ready to use. When you're ready to thread your needle, just slide the looped end of the bristle through the eye of the needle. Because the bristle is firm and narrow, it goes through easily, even on the smallest needles. Then take your thread and slip it through the loop of the bristle. Gently pull the bristle back through the needle, and your thread will follow right through without any struggle. This little homemade threader works wonderfully, and the best part is, you can reuse it as many times as you like. The copper wire threader. Here's another brilliant little trick, and it's made from something most of us already have, lying around the house: an old phone charger or a piece of electrical wire. Don't throw those cables away just yet, because hidden inside are tiny copper wires that make the perfect needle threader. Start by cutting off a small section of the wire and peeling back the outer plastic layer. Inside, you'll find a bundle of very thin copper strands. Choose one and cut it to about 3 inches long. Then fold the copper wire in half so that it forms a small loop at one end. This loop will act as your thread holder. Next, to make it easier to use, take a small binder clip or even a twist tie to hold the two ends together. This gives your new tool a little handle so it's easier to grip. Now you're ready to use your homemade threader. Insert the looped end of the copper wire through the eye of your needle. Because copper is both flexible and firm, it slides through easily without bending too much. Once it's through, take the end of your thread and slip it into the little loop. Then gently pull the copper wire back out of the needle's eye, and just like that, your thread comes right through. A little creativity can make life so much easier, especially for those small, everyday tasks that test our patience the most. The medicine blister pack trick. This next trick is one of those "why didn't I think of that" moments. Start by finding an empty blister pack from any over-the-counter pills, such as vitamins or pain relievers. Cut out one small square section that still has the thin aluminum foil backing attached. Next, take a pair of scissors and trim one corner into a sharp, narrow point, kind of like the tip of an arrow. This point will act as your threading guide. Now use a small pin or the tip of a sewing needle to poke a tiny hole right near that pointed edge. Be gentle so the hole stays small and neat. What you've made is a tiny, flexible metal tab with a built-in hook. To use it, hold the blister pack between your fingers and line up the pointed corner with the eye of your needle. Slip it through just slightly so the sharp tip goes in first. Then take your thread and insert it through the little hole you made in the foil. Once it's in place, gently pull the blister pack back out of the needle and your thread will slide through the eye perfectly. It might sound too simple, but it works like magic. The foil's stiffness helps guide the thread, while the pointed corner makes it easy to aim straight into the eye. Best of all, it's practically free and gives a second life to something you'd normally throw away. The paper trick. Here's one last clever and practical tip: threading a needle using nothing more than a simple piece of paper. Start by finding a small piece of thin paper, like writing paper or even notebook paper. Avoid anything too thick, such as cardboard, because it won't bend easily. Fold the paper in half lengthwise so it forms a clean crease. Use your fingers to press along the fold and make the crease sharp. This step is important because it helps guide the thread later. Next, take your sewing thread and lay it right along the fold, making sure the end of the thread sticks out just a little bit. Then use scissors to trim one end of the folded paper into a narrow pointed shape, kind of like a triangle. This sharp point will make it much easier to insert through the eye of your needle. Now comes the fun part. Hold the paper steady and carefully guide that pointed tip through the needle's eye. Because the paper is firm and smooth, it slips through with almost no resistance. Once it's through, gently pull the paper forward until the tip is halfway out, then pinch it lightly and tear the paper just a bit. The thread will slide right through the needle's eye, clean, fast, and effortless. When you're done, just pull away the paper and you're ready to sew. It's such a simple method, yet it works perfectly, even for tiny needles. No special tools, no frustration, just a little everyday ingenuity. This all reminds me of my grandmother: patient hands, steady eyes, and a quiet joy in every stitch. Threading a needle isn't just about sewing. It's about slowing down, creating, and finding beauty in small things. Thank you for watching. Stay kind to yourself, and I'll see you soon with another heartwarming tip.